bit over a year ago, I remember reading an article talking about a survival crafting game where the goal was to create a town of your own that NPCs could move into and help you run. Yes, this game was being pitched to me as a stealth city builder masquerading as a survival crafter. At the time, I hadn't played a survival crafting game for over a decade, but I've always had a soft spot for city builders, so I picked it up and promptly forgot about it. Fast forward several months after getting sucked into the Planet Crafter, it felt like the survival genre had finally started to click for me. With that under my belt, I thought it was time to come back around and finally check out that game I'd picked up and see what it was all about. When you start a new game of Medieval Dynasty, you have a choice between two maps. The Valley is the dedicated single-player map, putting you in the shoes of Rasimir in the story of his rise from humble farmer to founder of, well, a medieval dynasty. The Oxbow map was added later with the multiplayer update, and we'll take a look at that one in time. Rasimir's story starts like all good stories do, with his home being burned down by an army fighting a war in the region. Which army and which war don't seem to be details the game elaborates on, from what I could see. And that's fine, it's just an excuse for the game to happen. The cutscene visually is actually quite nice. It reminds me a lot of the cutscenes in Lichdom Battle Mage. Rasimir's one hope is to find his uncle, who moved to the valley many years ago after making a modest fortune. Unfortunately, the mayor of the first town he comes across informs him that his uncle passed away not long before he arrived. It's not all bad news, though. As a condolence, the mayor allows Rasimir to build a home anywhere in the valley that isn't already claimed. There's no time to waste, so I pick a spot on the map and head out. As you might already expect given this is a survival game, we need wood to build a house, which means it's time to cut down a tree. Stone axes are easy enough to make by hand, and the tree falls in a handful of hits, but before we can use it, we need to hit it a few more times to strip the branches and bark off. Medieval Dynasty establishes early on that it's aiming for a more realistic survival simulation. That gets especially reinforced when I start building the house. Each building in the game requires several different materials, usually in large quantities, each of which you place one at a time by hitting the blueprint of the building with your hammer. It's a slow, methodical process that makes every building feel like an accomplishment, but it can also be real daunting the first time you try it. Like in any survival situation, you also need to keep an eye on your hunger and thirst. The game starts you with a generous amount of food, and you can get water from any lake or river, so it's easy to manage most of the time. Just don't think about what might be hiding in it. Thirst can cause some real problems on long, cross-country journeys, but between the odd creek and being able to carry buckets or water skins, there's always a way to manage it. After 12 minutes and 2 different hammers, I finish my house, which is the objective of the first chapter. And chapters are the game's way of pacing out the tutorials, so it doesn't just dump a bunch of information on you all at once. I think it was a really good call, because this game has about a dozen different systems, each with their own quirks and nuances that'll be key to your success. Easing the player into those helps the information stick better without feeling overwhelming. The cap on the number of buildings you can have at once is also tied to your chapter progress, so you'll want to complete them as soon as possible. Aside from the building and survival gameplay, you can also complete quests for the locals. Some of the quests are lengthy chains following the life of one of the villagers, though sometimes they can be as simple as supplying some building materials. And they're worth doing. Besides helping to build your dynasty's reputation, they're a good way to make money or even points towards the game's various tech trees if you're lucky. With the house built, I decided it was time to start working on the story quests, so we go back and talk to the mayor. Rasimir's hoping to find more details about the kind of person his uncle was, and as luck would have it, the mayor was one of his traveling companions. He's more than happy to share some stories over a mug of oat beer, though he does tell Rasimir to return the next day if he's interested in learning more. In the meantime, my next chapter goal is to hunt an animal. Unfortunately, hunting birds with a spear is really hard. Hunting overall is trickier in this game than I'm used to, though the traps do work quite nicely. Upon returning to the mayor, we find out there's been a murder in the valley, but that's nothing for us to worry about. Instead, Rasimir gets pointed to another member of his uncle's merry band. The man lives alone off in the wilderness, and I've been neglecting my farm, so we'll get back to him later. While exploring, I run across some plum tree seedlings in a barrel. Now, if Stardew Valley has taught me anything, you want to get those planted as soon as possible. Unfortunately, reading comprehension is hard, so that doesn't go super well. To plant anything, you need a bag, which can either be bought from a merchant or crafted using some leather. I'm broke and haven't managed to take down anything big, so I'm stuck on that for the time being. The game does feature an in-game knowledge base if you need to figure out how to do something. It's searchable by topic or even by specific item, so it's incredibly handy while you're learning the game. With my dreams of becoming more plumb than man shattered, I made the questionable call to tackle a quest for the mayor's wife. She ordered some rye from a town on the other side of the map, but the shipment never arrived. That sounds like a job for an aspiring village leader, but here we run into a fairly unique problem in the game. Each season in the game lasts for 3 in-game days, unless you change that in the customization options. And longer quests can eat up a lot of that time. Now that's certainly not an issue with the game, but it is an easy trap to fall into when you're new. Learning to prioritize questing versus developing your town is just part of the process. Either way, my deciding to trek across the map this late in the day is not one of the smarter decisions that I've made. The supplier tells us that he did, in fact, send out a courier with the shipment, so we'll need to track that down in the morning. I stopped just outside the town and set up camp, inadvertently dooming myself in the process. What I didn't know at the time is that I'd camped on the edge of wolf territory, but don't worry, they'd let me know soon enough. Again, going back to the more realistic, rural, medieval life sim idea, combat is brief and lethal. You and the enemies both die in just a few hits, and taking on more than one enemy at a time is a death sentence, if you're not properly equipped, and probably also getting the drop on them. The combat music's nice, though. It's a bit Steel for Humans at home, but that's one of my favorite game soundtracks of all time, so I'm certainly not complaining. I touched on it a bit earlier, but as you construct buildings and use them to make things, you earn points on the game's 4 different tech trees. At different thresholds, those points unlock new buildings or upgrades to existing ones, and most of them come with a variety of blueprints that you can buy using coins. This is how you unlock new tools and weapons, your cooking recipes, potions, things that can keep your villagers happy, and a whole host of cosmetic items for making your village as detailed as you want. For the most part, I really enjoy the system, since it rewards engaging with all of the different building types. Some of the trees are definitely easier to earn points for than others, though, so it can also lead to some awkward progression when one of the trees starts lagging behind. But this brings us to the end of spring. I only have a house and a well to my name at the moment, so I'll probably need to spend some time in summer working on my village. To kick off the summer, I decided to build a resource storage for the village, which just might be the most important building that I ran across. It has a massively increased storage capacity over the other buildings, but what makes it so useful is it also supplies that stored material to other buildings and crafting tasks within its radius. I can't stress enough how much this one building helps with inventory management, which is especially important in the game because not only does your character have a weight capacity, it can be very tight. Thinking about it, the way the storage buildings work means that the best way to build a village is probably just arranging things in hubs by resource type, but I'll have to give that one a try the next time I play the game. Once the resource storage was complete, my next goal was to build a hunting lodge, so I could craft a bow. I don't have enough practice with the spears to hunt with them effectively, so hopefully a bow will make that particular activity easier. I've also started to run into an issue with where I built my house. The area is very hilly, which makes building difficult. On top of that, I also built way too close to a town that I completely missed on the map, which means that I don't have a lot of room to expand. Choosing a good location is key, and I feel like this is one of the games where you're expected to restart after an hour or so, a few times, just so you can get the hang of what a good start location looks like. Once I finished the lodge and bought the bow blueprint, I realized that I was missing the linen thread that I needed. That's not something that I can craft right now, so that leaves buying it from a merchant. At this point, I felt like I'd gotten a decent handle on how the early game worked, so I rounded up the usual suspects and we decided to check out the multiplayer. Rather than the tale of Rasimir and his descendants, the Oxbow map casts you and any friends you bring along as the survivors of a caravan that was attacked by bandits. It also assumes you've played the Valley map because instead of a proper tutorial, it just kind of throws you in the deep end and tells you to keep an eye on things. This map also offers you the chance to customize your character, though seeing as I am perpetually unbothered by such things, I will be playing this map as default man. Right off the cuff, there are some striking differences between the two maps. While the Valley is fittingly hilly with several small villages, the Oxbow starts with one large town and is fairly flat. Between the general lack of elevation and how many more resources there are, it's clearly designed to support much larger settlements. While we waited for everyone to load in, we tracked down a suitably clear area in the middle of a lot of trees and started building our house. That process went, well, I better let this one speak for itself.
Yeah, I can see that now.
So, oh yeah,
You okay?
I died!
If I turn around, am I
I
gonna...
died!
No,
No!
did the tree fall on
The
you?
tree killed me!
No!
I didn't know that
Oh, this is horrible.
I didn't know that could happen. I'm so glad I have that recorded. Fortunately for me, death in multiplayer just sends you back to town with low health, hunger, and thirst. You can also reroll your character if you want, but I didn't see the point. While we didn't notice when we were picking a spot, the map is also dotted with ruins. For the most part, they provide great looting opportunities, usually having either money or higher level gear with reduced durability, though I fully expect them to eventually be full of bandits. The days in the Oxbow also feel shorter than in single player. I'm assuming that's to offset just how much faster you can progress, since tech points are shared across the whole group. Just with the few hours we managed to play for this video, the four of us outpaced what I managed to accomplish by myself in over twice that time. Part of that might also have to do with the change to how the building limit is handled, namely that without chapters, I'm not entirely sure there is one. We built over a dozen buildings by the end of our time without hitting a limit, so the Oxbow is probably a great choice if you prefer the flexibility over the more structured progression of the valley. With more mouths to feed, though, we decided to try our hand at farming. That means that we needed a compost bin. Just like in real life, the compost bin takes food items and turns them into fertilizer. Or 1/10 of a fertilizer, as it were. That change happens when the seasons tick over, so we got it built right before the start of summer. With the start of summer, we hit the season where you might find yourself turning off character voices. Your character's temperature is also something that you need to manage, and the summer heat draws near constant complaints to warn you that your temperature is too high. There are ways to handle it, like wearing a hat or going for a swim, but at least in the first year, it doesn't seem to cause any real problems. This is also the time where hunting finally clicked for me. Embarrassing accuracy aside, the game wants you to do some persistence hunting. All you need, at least for anything that doesn't attack back, is to hit them once with a spear or arrow and then chase them down. Injured prey takes damage over time while they're moving, so eventually you will get the kill even if it takes a while. It's worth it too, since larger animals provide a lot of meat and leather. After a bit of hunting to restock on food and get our farm rolling, we went exploring and stumbled across a town that's burned down and sunk into the swamp. There's a neat bit of environmental storytelling here, as several of the buildings feature furniture that's been shot with poison arrows. Yet another thing that starts raising the bandit alarm in the back of my mind. At this point, our town is really starting to come together, and it's probably about time for us to start building more houses so we can start recruiting villagers. Sadly, we didn't quite make it there this time around, so that'll have to be a story for another time. On the plus side, though, bows do, in fact, work great for hunting. Something that never cropped up in single player, but came up all the time in multiplayer, was how the game handles staying up past midnight. Normally you can push things more or less as long as you want. The only downside I saw to not sleeping was that you don't heal, but most of the time that didn't matter, so we spent most of spring building long into the night. If the season is ending, though, suddenly the characters act just like I do in real life and pass out the minute the clock hits 11:59. Going into fall, we got our first random event. In this case, a seasonal storm damaged 5 of our buildings, so we spent the first bit of the day repairing all that. I'm sure some of the other events can be positive, though I'm also certain there are some much worse ones hiding in the game. Fall also introduced us to Royal Challenges, where the king issues a challenge that you can accept to gain a large amount of Dynasty favor. The one we received was to raise 1,000 coins to help the king buy back part of the kingdom he gambled away to the world's luckiest stable boy. And while that's slightly more money than I expect exists in the world, the deadline was 5 seasons, so they seem tough but doable. Besides selling things that you grow or craft, Oxbow also comes with a notice board in town that gives seasonal quests. The 2 we tackled first just required us to turn in a medium amount of certain items for more than what we would have been able to sell them for. But there were also 2 hunting quests that offered considerably more than those. Once you have a bow, those are probably a pretty good way to make money. Unfortunately, this brings us to the end of what we managed to do in multiplayer. But with the new knowledge and experience I had gained, there was only one thing I could do. It was time to restart my single-player save. The first thing I made sure to do was move closer to the center of the map. That would keep me close enough to the important towns to visit for quests and vendors, but not so close that I'd have to worry about them cutting into where I could expand. One of the sticking points across both maps was that it was actually pretty difficult to generate farming tech points. Now, normally I'd try to figure this one out on my own, but after more time than I'd like to admit scratching my head, I caved and looked it up. So thank you to some very helpful people on Reddit. Here's how you can quickly grind farming tech. Set up a field, plow the field, smack it with a hammer, rinse and repeat until you can actually start farming. In just a minute or two, I was able to get enough to build a food storage and get most of the way towards unlocking the barn. I also wanted to experience one of the other quest lines this time around, so I started working on Alvin's quest line. He's feeling stuck in his life as a farmer, and after talking to Rasimir for a couple months, decides that he wants to pick up archery to get away from life in the fields. For that, he'll need a bow, but for some reason you can't just make him one, so you have to trek out to the hills to find a hunter who's selling them. After a lengthy trek that I had to restart partway through after an unfortunate ambush by 2 wolves, Alvin gets his bow. The next couple steps of the quest involve him practicing with it and testing himself against your own abilities. And I think this questline really helps show one of the game's biggest strengths, namely that it takes place over a very long timeline. Unlike most survival games where you play the same character the whole time, your character here ages and eventually retires. At that point, control switches to your previous character's heir, with a boost to skills based on how well the two got along. With such a long game, you get to watch as the quests you did and didn't take impact your neighbors years after the fact. For now, I'm stuck on chapter progress, since that requires seeds that I can't afford, and way more fertilizer than I have spare food to make, so the only thing left is to start prepping for winter and get caught up on my buildings. Compared to the other seasons, winter is a whole other beast entirely, though less punishing than I was expecting. As you might expect, with no foraging and a reduced animal presence, finding food is harder but not impossible. The real killer is the temperature. Being outside constantly drains your heat, which can be mitigated by wearing warm clothing or holding a torch. I didn't have any money for warm clothing and hadn't unlocked the sewing hut to make it myself, so it's torches for me. And if you manage to deal with your character's constant complaining during summer, winter will be the season you finally turn the voices off. I quickly hit the building cap, which meant the only thing I could really do to pass the time until spring was to finally track down the other member of the uncle's old gang. He tells another story about Rasimir's uncle, and I'm convinced this man just dumped all his points into charisma. On talking to the mayor again, we get a bit more context to the other member of the gang. It turns out that man was formerly a mercenary and torturer that Rasimir's uncle bribed to allow them all to escape. There are some uncomfortably detailed descriptions of that torture that feel really out of place against the tone of the rest of the game, at least up to this point. Kind of like if your average Minecraft session took a dive into Game of Thrones-esque grit for 3 minutes. But that brings us to the end of my time with the game, for now. And as winter comes to a close, it's time to sort out my feelings on Medieval Dynasty. Honestly, I loved my time with this game. While it can feel overwhelming looking at all the different systems when you don't know what you're doing, there's nothing quite like that feeling of seeing your settlement come together. Doubly so when you can share that with other people. And I know I've barely scratched the surface of this game. When I decided to cover it, I really underestimated just how much game there was here, so I'm sure I'll be coming back to this one somewhere down the line to see how it changes later. Between this and the Planet Crafter, I feel like I'm really starting to understand the appeal of survival games, though I'm years late to the party on that one. If there's a survival game you really enjoy, leave it down in the comments. I'd like to cover more of these in the future. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, why not check out my first look at Obsidian's latest masterpiece? Or if that's not your speed, why not take a look at one of my favorite indie RPGs? Either way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had as much fun with this one as I did making it, and I'll catch you in the next one.